Welcome back everybody. Today's topic is something I originally thought about before seeing The Last Jedi. That is, I assumed that Luke Skywalker would train Rey in episode 8 and probably make it to episode 9 where he would sacrifice himself to save the day, ending his story arc as one of the greatest Jedi to have ever lived. Of course, I always had my suspicions that they might kill him off in episode 8 so that they could shift all the focus over to Rey and Kylo Ren in episode 9, but I never thought he would go out the way he did. What I was hoping would happen was that he would turn up on the Supremacy and save Rey from Snoke just in time. In that way, he would go out like a boss, and Snoke's merit as a villain would reach legendary status. I'm sure Rian Johnson perhaps even considered this at one point of time during production, but nope. Snoke got pawned and Luke dowsed him teleported to another level of existence. So let's take a look at an article based on the behind the scenes documentary focusing on Mark Hamill's interview where he shares his own thoughts about some of his ideas and misgivings. Mark Hamill reveals early in development on Star Wars The Last Jedi, he inquired about the possibility of saving Luke Skywalker's heroic sacrifice for episode 9. The actor's feelings on Rian Johnson's movie are well documented by now, with his comments about fundamentally disagreeing with Luke's portrayal, gaining notoriety months before the film was released. In the time since, Hamill has expressed regret over publicly sharing his concerns, stating that creative differences are common in filmmaking. His stance on The Last Jedi now is that it is a great movie and he loved the experience. That's why he got his star. Still, this dynamic will forever be fascinating in the Star Wars community, since few people have a better understanding of Luke than Hamill. It shouldn't come as any surprise this topic is touched upon in the behind the scenes documentary The Director and the Jedi, available on Blu-ray. And while most of the discourse is material already covered, there was one new aspect to be gleaned from the documentary. In one section of the film via We Got This Covered, Hamill discussed his pitch for Star Wars 9, which involved keeping Luke alive for the sequel trilogy finale. My first reaction was, can't we push this off until episode 9? Luke eventually does the right thing, selflessly, for the good of the Rebel Alliance, and I realized I should do the selfless thing for the betterment of the movie. Seriously, I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing, I'm just saying, in the greater scope of things, number one, I never expected to come back, so this is all like found money. It would have been fun to see Luke live to fight another day, but The Last Jedi is arguably a stronger film with the climax it has. Arguably, yes indeed, let's agree to disagree there. A case can be made there wouldn't have been much for Skywalker to do in episode 9 had he lived. Another point I would contest. His arc in the sequel trilogy, grumpy curmudgeon to heroic legend, plays out over the course of The Last Jedi, so there may not have been a compelling conflict there. Keeping Luke around would have dragged his role out longer in the series. That really isn't his story. Yes, The Last Jedi title is a direct reference to Luke, but the sequels are about Rey and Kylo Ren's respective journeys. Now, episode 9 can focus on the two youngsters without worrying about giving Luke his due. One of the reasons why Skywalker was saved for a last scene cameo in The Force Awakens is because he overshadowed the newcomers. Plus, it's likely we haven't seen the last of Hamill in Star Wars. Viewers would be quite surprised if Luke did not return as a Force ghost in episode 9 to share some wisdom with Rey at a time of need, or, in a twist, haunt Kylo Ren. Such an inclusion would have to be organic to the story J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio are telling, of course. But with Leia no longer a part of episode 9, Rey will need someone with experience she can go to. Nobody should expect Force Ghost Luke to start electrocuting guerrilla walkers on the battlefield, but perhaps he can finally give his gifted apprentice that third lesson he promised on Ahch-To. After the screening, Hamill recalled how anxious the changes to the role made him. Having read Johnson's script before the first entry in the new trilogy came out, he was concerned about inconsistencies. He had heard that The Force Awakens director J.J. Abrams planned to include floating boulders around Luke during the final shot of Episode 7, which would suggest the Jedi still had Force powers, even though Johnson's screenplay found Luke powerless. Remember when I called you up asking, did they take out the floating boulders? Hamill said to Johnson. I called Ryan and said, did you know they're going to put in floating boulders? It won't match your script. The floating boulders ultimately didn't make the cut. So, the floating boulders proves that they didn't really have this trilogy planned out, and Rian Johnson came in and tried to M. Night Shyamalan everybody with Snoke's shocking death and Luke's total crippling manic depression, which is strange because a diet of seafood is supposed to help out with that. Maybe that green milk he's drinking has serious side effects. No space Xanax he could have taken perhaps? Do they have medical care in the Star Wars universe? Maybe he did have a prescription but he refused to take it. Sorry peoples, I know it's just a movie, but these are some of the things I think about. So okay, it's understandable that they want to focus on the new characters, Rey and Kylo Ren, I get that. But this is supposed to be a Skywalker saga. I always had my suspicions Rey might turn out to be a Skywalker. That fell through, right? She's a nobody according to Rian Johnson, unless J.J. Abrams retcons that in episode 9. Kylo Ren is technically a solo, and as we saw in the article, they killed Luke off so he wouldn't overshadow the new characters. So is it still a Skywalker saga? No, truly, who's the Skywalker? Kylo Ren? If they've planned to kill the Skywalkers off, they already have. Luke was the last Skywalker. As far as we know, he has no offspring. I mean, how do you feel with the way the Skywalker bloodline ended? Luke meditated himself out of this plane of existence. That's it. See yas. Some of you might be fine with that, like Luke transcended, maybe that's the ultimate achievement a Jedi can achieve, finding peace and whatnot, but I found it sad. Luke went out with smoke and mirrors. So I was thinking, of course Disney wants to bring in a younger audience, a new generation of Star Wars fans, and their fear might have been, what do we do with Luke Skywalker? They need someone they can relate to, and they can't relate to some old guy. Let's kill him off and shift focus over to the new generation. So I'll ask you people who are a little bit younger amongst my audience to leave a comment down below. Can you relate to Luke Skywalker at all? Did his character interest you? Or were you more interested to see where Rey and Kylo Ren will end up? I think that's what the suits over at Disney are interested in too. We know Rian Johnson said he dreaded the job he had of tackling Luke's character, and I'm not defending him here. I thought what he did with the character was a mistake, but after having a long time to think about this stuff, this is what I think motivated him to do what he did. Disney wants a new generation of Star Wars fans. Luke is from a bygone era and he has to go so that Rey and Kylo Ren can shine. Rian Johnson probably thought the best way he could achieve that is by getting rid of Snoke in a shocking twist to match The Empire Strikes Back I am your father scene, which did not work for me, and by getting rid of Luke, but what I think he thought would work as a story mechanic was Luke not actually being defeated by anybody physically or in battle. Luke goes out on his own terms, so to say. Unfortunately, even though I respect the attempt, it didn't work. For me, don't get all riled up if it worked for you. These are just my opinions. He chose to make Luke a reclusive hermit to lessen his impact on the sequel trilogy, and he never leaves the island because if he did, focus would shift back to him instead of Rey. At least that's what I think Rian Johnson believes. But the reason given for Luke being a reclusive hermit is lackluster. There were other options that would have been more believable other than having a temporary lapse in judgment. I mean, who doesn't have a temporary lapse in judgment? All the world's islands should be filled with hermits by this point if that was the case. Heck, even I would be living on an island, especially after binge drinking. Ugh. So there you have it peoples, hope you enjoyed my ramblings. What do you think? Should Luke have made it to episode 9? Did he have to die for the sequel trilogy to work? And do you think Rian Johnson was pressured into getting rid of Luke so that the new generation could shine? Leave your thoughts down below. If you're new to the channel and haven't already, hit that notification bell to stay updated. And don't forget to like, share, sub and all of that good stuff. And until next time, see yous.